Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Purpose Dr. Robin podcast. So glad you're here and you listening to the podcast. I say it over and over, and I will continue to say it over and over. Really appreciate you. And you've helped the podcast get rated in the top 5% of all podcasts globally, according to Listen Notes. So thank you so much for listening. And if you would help us keep the podcast going, go on over, rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast, and it'll be a big help. Thank you for doing that. Okay, now today I'm talking with Rachel Karu. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Rachel. She's the author of Stepping Into More Lessons from a Recovering Perfectionist. I mean, I hear some people already, the ears pricking up. But anyway, it also has a companion CD of songs by the same title. Her personal journey as a recovering perfectionist inspired her to create Stepping Into More, a professional and personal development company, which is dedicated to supporting clients to identify their GPS. And we're going to hear more about that later. And the idea is to unearth and honor their true north. Ooh, I can't wait to get into this conversation. But let me just say a few more things about Rachel. Before launching Stepping Into More, highlights from her corporate experience include Human Resource Manager at EMI Music Distribution and Manager of Organizational Development Training at Easton Sports. Welcome, Rachel Carew.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So glad you're here. Okay, so now you heard me read your introduction bio. Well, tell us in your own words. First, anything you want to say about you, and then about your work. Just an overview of your work.
Terrific. Yeah, so an overview of me is I am a wondrous and wonderful person, filled with curiosity and passion. And I was very much in tune with all of that as I was growing up. And I primarily love to creatively self express through singing and performing. And then at the tender age of 18, after attending acting school, was told, no, you're not going on to the next year, and it'll probably be best for you to pursue other careers at 18. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was a full-fledged perfectionist. And when I received that feedback, I thought, I must suck at this. And I turned my back on performing for over 20 years. And anytime I would try to perform, my arms literally would be glued at my side, just in fear, numb. And when I was at EMI Music Distribution, which at that time had 10 record labels, nobody had a clue that I sang. So that continued for over 20 years until I was on my way to facilitate a work-life balance workshop. My life was not so unbalanced, and I was in a car accident, which thankfully was not too serious. But while in physical therapy, I saw a flyer for a workshop called Joy of Singing. And that is what I had been after all my life. How do I get back to the joy of this? And when I attended that workshop, that was the beginning of me reclaiming my creative, expressive self. And it's been quite a journey. So that's a little bit about my journey. And that's what led to writing the book and producing a CD of songs that are a companion to the book.
Love that. I love that. So was there when you went, and I don't know if you remember, but when you saw the flyer, and did you think, well, maybe I'll try singing again, or were you just drawn to the idea of it? Because it sounds like you had already decided you're not going to sing. And so I'm wondering what was the sort of catalyst to say, I'm going to try it, to step past all the things that held you back before.
Great question. And really, at that point, I had been living in so much doubt and shame and judgment for over 20 years. And when I saw that flyer, it was immediately my intuition, my spidey senses were just like, yes, jump into this. This is the path. And because it's exactly what I had been seeking, joy of singing. I mean, that's exactly it. So when I started investigating and what this was and what it was all about, I just followed my intuition and said, okay, I need to do this. And it really was transformative for me.
And the reason why I'm so intrigued by this because I'm convinced there's somebody listening right now who has a similar experience. That's something that they enjoy doing and had some feedback that stopped them in their tracks. And so I'm spending a little time on this in hopes that it inspires them to do like you did when you went to the workshop. So because of that, let me ask you another question
Sure.
about that. All right. So now when you get to the workshop, did you still have, because the intuition got you there. Now, once you were there, you still have this kind of fear that you had before, or did it take some time to release?
This was a weekend workshop. And it culminated over a weekend into a performance for hundreds of people.
Wow.
So
And you knew that going into the workshop?
I knew very little
I was
going
gonna
into the
say.
workshop. And I was assigned a very challenging Stephen Sondheim song. And I was terrified, honestly. I just couldn't believe that I was doing this. And by the time the performance came, there was this sense within me that even though I was so fearful, that I was also reconnecting to myself. There was a part of me that knew exactly what to do, how to show up, how to be with myself and the audience. And it was an out of body experience for me. I'm all about feeling the fear and doing it anyway. Of course, with reason. But in this case, though, I knew that I needed to really step into more. I needed to step out of that fear and just take the plunge and be open and trust. Let's see what evolves from this.
Love that. And I hope whoever's listening, and because even if you've had the fear for a while, like you did, but the intuition kind of kicked in and propelled you forward. And so hopefully this inspires somebody. I'm glad you did that. And how'd you do on the performance at the end of that weekend?
It was amazing. I nailed it.
Did you enjoy it?
That's really the question.
Yes.
And yes, I did enjoy it. And interestingly, that experience led to a series of events, including starting to produce cabaret shows, which I put together, I think 3 or 4 sold out shows. I invited other artists. And you know what? My perfectionism came back. And my perfection, I even auditioned too for community theater. And all of a sudden, I was like, this feels like work to me. I'm not enjoying this. And I really got in my head. And I took a long pause and said, you know what, this isn't it. I don't know what is next, but this is not how I want to experience my creativity. So it took quite a while for me to come sort of full circle to where I am now and really sort of redefining success. That success when I was a kid was about being on the stage, receiving approval from people. How many books did I sell? How many CDs? And that's not what success is for me at all when it comes to my creativity now. It is really about the joy. And how can I feel that joy? And how can I feel in general? Because the reason I love to sing is because it was one of the few places growing up that I could authentically express even the not so pretty emotions. And when I'm connected in that way, I know that I'm creating space for other people to connect to their own feelings. And that is what's so meaningful for me about singing.
All right. So And the perfectionism came back. What happened that helped you move forward to that? Because you're here now, so that means at some point you were able to kind of move forward. What helped you during that kind of relapse of sorts?
Really, what helped me was to ask myself the question, which came up during the Joy of Singing workshop. And what led to the cabaret shows was, how do I want to experience my creativity and my singing? And how can I do this in a way where I'm empowered and I get to call the shots? And that this is not about someone giving me approval to tell me whether I'm good enough to do this. And so I started recording music, and really loved it. I found a producer, and just on my own terms and my own time, just little by little recording songs, and that was a starting point for me. Again, though, it took quite a while until I really started singing on more of a regular basis and found outlets to sing in a way that really enriched me and made my heart feel full.
Yes, and I hope somebody heard that because you said what was your own creative expression in your own time, in your own way, little by little. So I hope somebody hears that so they can help them go little by little in their own time and way. Yes.
Yes, and trust me, Robin, patience is not one of my greatest strengths. So it really took a lot to trust that, you know what, I am where I need to be right now, and that things are going to unfold in their own time, the way they're meant to unfold.
Yes. Yes. Well, good for you. And it sounds like you learned some valuable lessons throughout that journey that are now in the book. Tell us about the main idea or the main point of the book.
Sure. So basically, it is a autobiographical self-help book detailing my journey with my creative expressive self, and then how my perfectionism got in the way, and how I disconnected from my singing and performing, and how I found my way back. And at the end of each chapter, I have reflective questions for the reader to really be able to apply to their own lives, whether they're struggling with perfectionism or really any other gap that's getting in the way of them leading the lives that they want to live.
What's one hint or one thing that helped them move forward? And like you just said, there's several sort of strategies. What's one you can share with us now?
One is, I am really passionate about inspiring reflection and results. And I think in our day to day, we are so caught up in the crisis du jour and being in the service to others and pleasing others that we often lose sight of who we are at our core. So, to create space for yourself, to really reconnect to what I like to call your sage self, which is that part of you that knows who you are, knows what your values are, knows what your strengths are, what energizes you. And when we connect to that part of ourselves, then we can start to really know when we're moving towards truly who we are, and when we're making choices that are distracting us or taking us away from our sage. So that reflection is key.
Okay, so reflection is key. So we're hearing some lessons from you already. Intuition, little steps, and now what was the one you just said? Just escaped me right.
Reflecting and really getting to
Reflecting.
know who you are, your sage self is, that you're who you are
Yeah.
before.
Yes. Okay, so now you know the podcast is leadership purpose.
Mhm.
So the intent of the podcast for me was to help what I call high achieving women. Women who are responsible, goal oriented, ambitious in a positive way. They're good at a couple things. And people come to them in their professional life. They're the one that they come to ask questions, whether it's related to their work or not. And even in their personal life, people with family, community neighbors come to them and ask them questions. So they're giving support to people all the time. But people don't think they need support because they're good at a couple things and, they're doing that what they do. And so that's the woman I started the podcast for. And then after we were underway in the podcast, I said, okay, now let's add to that the woman who is now seeking more meaning and purpose in her work. There's nothing wrong. On paper, she looks fine. Career is wonderful. She achieved all the accomplishments, but she's yearning for more. Interesting. The same as your title of your book, similar to the title of your book. And she's thinking to herself, something missing and I just can't figure it out. So now the podcast and the conversations that we have, we speak to that woman. So, of course, your work speaks to her ideally. All right. So now that we have her attention and you know who she is, what's something from your experience, your book, your life that you could share with the woman I just described?
Wow, I so resemble so many of those things that you just shared. And I love working with these types of people as well. And the question again was, what was one?
So think about the person who says, I'm looking for meaning and purpose. I'm doing okay. What's something I could do to get on the path or any word you have for them?
Yeah, so one of the things you mentioned in my bio is this idea of our North Star. And when we think of our North Star, that is our purpose. And I don't know about you, but when I first started doing work around purpose, it was a little daunting to me because, some people, like in one sentence, this is my purpose. And I was just like, I can't do that. Like, that doesn't seem realistic to me. So I started really delving into this work around purpose and ultimately created the GPS framework you referenced, which stands for G, what are our gifts? What are those natural talents that come to us? P, what is our passion? As humans, we're great at many things, but just because I'm good at it doesn't mean I should be doing it. So, what energizes me? And this is where the values, your strengths, really understanding what it is that gets you alive. And then S, where do you like to be in service? And as you start to identify these three columns, then we can start to look for activities that align two or more of them. And when we're engaged with conscious choice in activities that align with the G, the P, and the S, this lets us know that we are leading a purposeful life. And it doesn't have to be put into some little box and be communicated in one or two sentences. So that identification is huge for people.
Of that GPS. And I'm not saying that only because it mimics my framework, which I won't go into detail right now because I want people to focus on what you said. I want them to be able to walk away with one thing. But much of what's in your framework is in my framework.
I love that.
A little more. But so I love hearing that and that you're helping people identify that because to me, like you, I believe that's the way to get at your purpose. Yeah. So, I'm hoping whoever heard that now is taking some advice from that away from this conversation. All right. So now you've been so generous to share your work and your experience and all that you're doing. Is there something from is there something from any area of your life or work that we did not talk about that you'd like to talk about before we tell people where they can be in touch with you? Because I'm guessing they want to get their hands on your work. So is there something else that you just that's on your mind or heart?
Thank you. Yeah, one of the tools and frameworks that has really supported me and my journey of working through my perfectionism and anxiety and emotional triggers is called positive intelligence. And positive intelligence is a framework to help us cultivate mental fitness. And what I mean by mental fitness is how can we approach things with more positivity instead of getting sucked into negativity. And as you know, we are hardwired for negativity. And the way in this framework it shows up is what's called our judge and our saboteurs. And saboteurs are basically strengths overdone. So, for example, even one saboteur is the stickler, which often leads to perfectionism. And on the strength side of it, when things are flowing for me, I'm able to do really detailed work, get lots of things done with ease. But the minute I start feeling and hearing the voice of, you made a mistake. Oh my God, what are people going to think about you? Or you're not doing this 130% all the time. Ah, my judge and saboteur in the house. And when they are activated, they are lying to us all the time. But we get in a habit of this repeat groove like a record, and we start to think this is who we are. But this is just aspects of who we are. So this wonderful framework is super impactful in understanding our judge and our saboteurs. There's an assessment to help you see your top saboteurs. And on the flip side, as I mentioned, your sage, that's really who we are at our core. And sort of the ultimate sage perspective is in any situation, there is a gift of or a learning, even in the most horrific of situations. So this framework is all about how to weaken the negativity pattern and start to strengthen our neural synapses to our sage so that we can access all of who we are and who we are truly with more ease and flow so that we can truly enjoy life.
Makes a lot of sense. And I mean, who doesn't want to enjoy life? All right. So for the sage, it goes back to what we talked about earlier in the conversation about how, even in your own experience, how your intuition was a guide. And so we all have that sage that is the guide, is really connecting to your intuition. So it's great that you told people, what it is, and now you have something that will help them sort of get at it and learn how to deal with that. And so with that in mind, where can people be in touch with you so they can learn more about this sage and get to it?
Awesome. And FYI, I am co-facilitating an 8-week group coaching program starting August 15th. We're only taking 4 people. So it's a very intimate group that will goes deep into this framework, and would love to be able to talk to your listeners about this wonderful opportunity. You can find me in the usual places. My website is www.steppingintomore.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Rachel Karu, Karu. I also have a YouTube channel, and you can find me on Spotify if you want to hear my CD of songs. So all of those places you can find me, and I would be delighted to offer your listeners, anyone that's interested, a 10% discount for signing up for the program, whether it's in August or at another point, because we offer this multiple times a year. So that's a little bit about where to find me.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your generous offer. I really appreciate that. And it sounds like you're doing amazing work. Rachel, I really appreciate everything you're doing, everything you shared. I believe your work is really making a difference. So I say keep it up and thank you for being here.
Thank you. That means a lot, Robin.
Okay, everyone, I would love to hear your response to this episode. Any questions, any thoughts you have about it, you can reach out to me. I encourage you to reach out to me on any social media channel, but I spend most of my time at LinkedIn. But no matter which one, I'm at Robin L. Owens, PhD, at Robin L. Owens, PhD. I'd love to hear from you, or just head on over to the podcast website, leadershippurposepodcast.com, leadershippurposepodcast.com, and we have a free resource for you there. And until next time, this is Dr. Robin.